So for our Aesthetics of Design class, I made a ski table for our final project. First, I actually wanted to make a chair. This was my inspiration. I wanted a chair, or a snowboard chair. You kind of see these things all over the place in mountain towns. They're pretty sweet. They actually sell for a crazy amount of money. I looked them up, and like the cheapest ones I could find were like $400. And I had like a garage or an attic, I guess, full of skis. Even after I used all these, there's still another like 20 pairs probably or so up there. So I could probably still go make a chair in the future. Some other innovative designs I saw in my research were these. These are snowboards, but still, like, as far as aesthetics go, these are pretty unique. They don't necessarily look more modern than your like typical ski town. Like those other ones are all made out of wood. They look a little more rustic. It's kind of hard to tell like what these people or how functional these are, but they still look pretty sweet. And with this being an aesthetics class, I thought that this was like kind of the path I wanted to go down. I wanted to do an upcycle because I'm using all my new material or old materials, old skis, old whatever, and I just wanted to not spend a lot of money really trying to do this class. So like at first I wanted to make it out of metal, but a 6-foot metal bar, like 1-inch bar, is like $100, and I would need like probably more than 6 feet, so I'm like upwards of $100 just to build a chair or a table in my case. So I was still trying to more the upcycle theme with my skis, some wood, anything. One thing I tried to do is contact a bunch of metal suppliers and see if they had a bunch of like scrap trash metal, and I was just going to tack weld a bunch of pieces of metal together to make a structure that would functionally work. But I saw this was super cool. These are probably old broken circuit boards, computer like motherboards, and they made the United States, and it looks sweet actually. So I was trying to do something similar and kind of turn all my trash into art. The project requirement was it had to be dynamic. So I had these old bearings from Component Design. I don't know, do you guys know what Component Design is? Yeah, do you know what it is? We make, basically the class is a drill-powered bike.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, and so you just strap a hand drill to a bike, essentially. I mean, they kind of tell you can't use a bike frame.
You can't use a bike frame anymore.
The semester I took it, you could actually, but we didn't. We bought these bearings and realized they're a little beefier than we needed, so we bought another set, and it would have cost me more to ship these back than I would have received in returning them. So I kept them. I had these bearings, and I wanted to use it. I wanted to do a swinging chair, right? Basically something like this. These have all been skis. And at the top, I would have had 2 bearings, and I could have mounted it to my parents' porch on their like deck joists above, and you would have had a sweet like swinging ski chair right in front of the house. But the more I talked to my parents about it, my mom was like, "Oh, I want it by the fireplace, this, that, the other," and like that design just kind of got a little convoluted. So I moved in. So this was the original idea with our swinging chair like that, right? It would have been super sweet. It might have put a hole in the side of my house, like swinging it. But it's okay, we'll move on. Here's my prototype that we saw before. And instead of doing a swinging chair, I was gonna make this cantilever out of skis. And so as you sat on it, the skis just like bent, and you had like a bouncy type of rocker chair. And still, this was all gonna be metal, and this was just gonna go into the ground, into like a pit with cement, and it would have been able to withstand all these like weird forces from you swinging it. But the more and more I went, the more I started to realize that comfort was going to be a huge problem. Like you see all these chairs, like I didn't want to make a chair that you didn't want to sit in. So like it would have looked cool, it would have been fine, but I was actually really worried about this one in particular. Is as you sat on the end of the cantilever skis, you were going to bend down and you weren't actually going to stay in the chair. And you would have had to like stand basically to sit in my chair. And I could have done some math to figure that out, but finding material properties on skis is really hard, first of all. They're not one type of wood, they're not one type of metal, they're not one type of anything, really. The only way to find out material properties would have been to test it. And even then, it would have been pretty inconsistent because each different part of a ski, like all these tips, let's see. So all the tips right here, you guess I'll show you guys this way. They're like pretty thin right here, and the farther you go back, it gets thicker and thicker. So like this is the middle of a ski, and you can see how beefy this piece is compared to the rest. See that? So like even when you measure a material property, it has to do with like the shape and all of these other factors. So I like kind of didn't want to just try it, because attaching them to the skis at the end like this would have been a challenge, and if I messed it up, it would have been like too late, and it would have been some significant amount of money out. And I was trying not to do that. So the other problem I was worried about was like the bumpiness and the smoothness of the skis. So like I didn't want a surface like this that just like sucked, you know, and it would have been like, sweet, you have the ski chair, let's put a pillow on it and cover all of it up, and now it's comfortable. And that's not really what I was going for. So I pivoted and I went from a chair to a table. And at first, actually, I wanted to do, I brought my bearing. Here's this. At first, I wanted to mount that on the inside, so I guess like right here. I wanted to mount this right here and just have the top of the table just rotate, because that would have fulfilled my dynamic requirement, and I thought it would have been a really clever way to have like a functional moving table, but it's square. And if you put it in a corner and tried to rotate it, it wouldn't, because it would hit the wall. And so I kind of figured that this open like hinge top would be way more functional. I figured like some storage space underneath is always a bonus. I don't know how easy it would be, like if you actually put something or a lamp on this table, you might not be able to use the storage, but it's still there just in case you ever wanted it. So my first design was like this. I actually wanted to slant my legs out, but as I realized, like planing wood at angles is actually not that easy to do. And because I did this at my house, I pretty much had a Sawzall, and yeah, that's it. So I, decided just to make it square, which it worked out in the end anyway because of these tips. So I'll just leave this thing up here now. These tips are actually, they're not necessarily straight, so they do come in already, which adds kind of part of the aesthetic anyway. Like when you push on this thing, they all flex, but it's fairly level. It's, it's pretty close. I'm assuming this will just like sit next to, it'll just be like a side table for a couch or something like that. I decided to use all of my like these old skis with these plastic tips on the bottom right here. I decided to use these ones for the legs, for a little like wear resistance, and you wouldn't necessarily put like a piece of metal on your, I don't know, hardwood, or I don't know necessarily what floorings I'll have in my future home. So having plastic tips was nice, but it holds me up. Another thing I was worried about was having it like sturdy, so I actually cut more skis to go across here at the bottom, but I ended up not needing to use it, which is pretty sweet. So as my design process went, I actually just went to Home Depot and picked some wood. This is a 2x3 on these tops, and then this bottom piece, I actually don't know the dimensions of this piece, but I just bought like a more finished wood piece so I didn't like get splinters on the bottom, even though I still spent like hours sanding this puppy. So I basically built the box first. I made sure that my ski top would fit, and then I guess the next part that I didn't explain here was these two pictures. So you can see like these gaps right here, and so like that's how I have it. And all these gaps you can kind of see. I wonder if this will stay up. No, not quite. You can kind of see like these spaces between each ski. I was a little worried about just like losing stuff in my table through these holes, which is a possibility. So one thing I looked into was squeezing them together. So if I just brought all these the back end pieces together, I'd fill in some of these gaps. So that looks like this. And you can kind of see like this half is filled in, this half is not. And it made the top like kind of flower out, which looked cool. But then I also had a lot of this bottom hinge piece that's right here, this piece, started to show. There was like 2 inches on either side when I pushed them together. and because my table is square, I wanted to keep them vertical, so it was just consistent. And I'll just deal with the gaps. I don't think this is probably gonna hold like keys.